my idea for this topic was that I feel like trying to get good at competitive Puyo is a lot like trying to get good at chess, but not just chess, like something more like bullet chess, where you only have a minute to play the entire game, and if you run out of time, you lose. So there's a lot of differences there where in Puyo you don't like run out of time and instantly lose. And also the speed at which you make decisions is a bit different because like in Puyo you you can essentially hit the maximum speed so you can play at the oh trying to for some reason my mouse cursor disappeared while I'm trying to look at stuff. But okay. But anyway, in Puyo you can hit the maximum speed, and at the top of the field it becomes pretty difficult, but it's something. Wait, my mouse cursor is being gone is bothering me. But anyway, so that's one difference, and it's also like chess is also there's no randomness in chess, and Puyo has your random piece queue. But as for why I would compare the two, I feel like Puyo is a lot deeper than most people realize. So the thing that you're doing actually has a lot of complexity behind it, and you could spend a lot of time on every decision and still run into situations where it's like hard to find the right decision to make, even if you like looked at it for a long time. And of course, there's some easy positions to play, but there's some hard decisions as well. And so, uh, so one of the things that I think people tend to forget or overlook pretty easily is that a lot of competitive Puyo depends on how fast you can play the game and how fast you can put down the pieces. So in something like bullet chess, it's more obvious because you run out of time and lose. But Puyo is still kind of like that, where you have to, if you are just too much slower than your opponent, they don't really have to do anything that's that good or that that like technical. Like if you know how to build a 15 chain, but you can only do it slowly in single player, and your opponent can build like a 5 chain really quickly, you might not be able to beat them because it doesn't matter like how much you know, it's about how much you can do and how fast you can do it. So if you can't play fast enough, then it's kind of like it doesn't matter what you do. Even it like I'll see times where people you can tell one player is like more solid at chaining or they know more chain ideas, but they don't necessarily win that often because the other player is just kind of faster and they just throw pieces down and it actually works out. So, in that sense, I really do think that people should focus a lot on speed, and I think that's kind of what makes it really difficult to improve at competitive Puyo because you have to do both sides. So, eventually, you get to a point where, like, you're playing players who are good enough that they can play at full speed, but they can also make good decisions. So you can't just play fast, you also have to make good decisions as well. And then you'll play against people who can play full speed and make good chaining decisions and do like mid-game attacks and stuff. So you also have to be able to play fast and make good chaining decisions and also do mid-game attacks. And So there's a few players where that comes to mind. A lot of game knowledge but lacking mechanics. I feel like that too, where some people I feel like are really into the like theoretical side of things and like coming up with ideas and coming up with chains and thinking about positions. Some people are also like into the mid game where thinking about how to make an attack. Hi, it is you. I would consider you one of those kinds of people where sometimes if you spend a lot of time thinking about stuff, I kind of consider myself like that too, where I'll spend a lot of time thinking about things, so I'm not as good at making quick decisions because I like to think a lot. So I'll think like, is it better to place the piece like this, or is it better to do this or this? Is it better to split or not split? Is there a difference between like one shape or the other? Is one better or is one worse? And I'll kind of want to like analyze every single point. Like, should I do this, this, this? Which one's better? But in an actual game, you don't really want to spend time thinking on those things because it'll just slow you down and it won't really benefit you that much. So that's something that you would want to kind of like try and figure out outside of the game. And then when you're actually playing, you just hope you have a good sense for what's good to do. And you just do that. But so I would say I feel like people are tend to be one or the other. They're either like really thought oriented, so they take a long time thinking through what they want to do and analyzing and stuff. So they might be good at learning new ideas and incorporating new ideas into their play, but they might be too slow to like actually use them that well. And then the other side is people who kind of just do things without overthinking them, so they tend to be pretty fast and they can make quick decisions, but then they also struggle to improve because at some point you can't just go fast. You have to actually like improve your decision making as well, like make better decisions and come up with different ideas on how to chain. So I think what people struggle with when trying to get better is that you have to do both. So there's probably one that you're kind of going to be worse at, but it doesn't really matter. You just have to do both. So no matter who you are, it's like you're going to run into something that's hard for you to improve at. And that's going to make it where it's like, that's why it takes so long to improve, I think, is that you have to learn new things, which is hard by itself, but you also have to learn them so well that you can essentially like do them without thinking about them. So there's a lot of like if you know this tell, well, you have to know it without thinking about it, and you have to be able to play it without like slowing down. So like I know I could do this as a tell. I know the reds are gonna be left over, so I could extend the tell by adding reds, and I can do all this without really thinking about it. But that's like something that I've practiced a lot, so now I can like see this without really slowing down that much. I can see, okay, there's a red hanging around, and then I can connect to it if I add 3 more reds. But it just takes so much, like, you have to see the situation so many times, I feel like, in order to be able to measure it. So you say, it's also tricky to isolate mechanics for drilling in Puyo, and I would agree with that a lot because it's hard to like it's hard to pick a single thing, or even if you do, it's hard to like um, it's hard to find a balance where it's like worth doing. It's enough that it's like worth practicing, but it's not overwhelming, and you can actually like kind of master it through practicing, so it's not like a ridiculously large concept. Yeah, and it's also hard to get to the point where you just instinctively know something and try and figure out like how do you get there. So something that I learned recently is that you can do this, and it's something I kind of wanted to talk about is this idea of throwing in the yellow and locking it in early. So now if I clear this, the yellow's already there.
1, 2,
But
3, 4.
oh, yeah. Surely this is the dawn of the coaching team era. I, I mean, I feel like the people who like to think more about the game would probably tend to be better as coaches and would tend to be maybe not as good as players, but I'm still doing what I can, seeing how far I can go. In some ways, I feel like I'm not really talented at Puyo. I just kind of play it a lot. And maybe because of all the things that I've like shown recently, it's more believable. Because if you just look at me playing, it looks like I'm really good.
2,
And, you know, like,
3,
I'm pretty good, but I feel like for how much I practice and how much I
7,
think about the game and all that,
9,
I could be better.
11.
But I just don't feel like I'm that like naturally good at Puyo. But I do think that comes back to the idea of like having to or wanting to analyze more and playing slower as a result. So I was trying to say it's hard to find that balance where uh, you're like playing faster, but not, but still making good decisions.
1,
But
2,
one thing that I do notice is that um, it can be frustrating when it feels like I'd say, especially if you're the type who puts a lot of thought into it, it can be frustrating to feel like you never see improvement from it. And part of that, I think, is due to like you have to do it really fast. You have to like learn to. So you can't just like some people will learn good mid game ideas with ideas that you like send a chain and you're not supposed to just respond with your main chain. You're supposed to like make a counter chain. So if someone sends this 2 double, well, theoretically you're supposed to send like a 3 or a 4 chain. You're not supposed to just send your main chain. So that can be frustrating if you know that, but the opponent just like always sends their main chain anyway, and then they always get away with it. And that's gonna happen if you're not like fast enough to extend your chain
1,
at the level that like really high level players can.
4, 5, 6, 7. Exploding knee.
To be honest, is anyone really talented at anything? I'm not really sure. I would say yes, but the degree to which people are talented can vary. So I feel like there are certain things that I'm like really talented in that it's pretty clear that I don't have to try as hard as other people do in those specific areas. I'm going to do really well anyway. I'm not like saying that to brag. I also think there's things that I'm not very talented in, but I do think to a certain extent it exists, but I don't know how, like, I wouldn't say it's everything. It's like, if you're not talented, you'll never be good, or like, I don't know, is there a limit for certain people? Are you like never gonna reach the top because you're not talented enough? I I don't know.
two, three,
I like to believe that that's not true, but it's
seven,
not easy to answer that really.
nine,
But
10, 11, 12, 13. Fighting Queen!
that happened to me. I think I focused on speed and was able to win more against opponents who had a lot more hours in the game than me who practiced chains. And that's something where it's like, yeah, that I do feel like will happen. It also happens in fighting games too, where a lot of people will practice their combos really hard and they'll like learn they'll like kind of learn it like um, like a school subject. They'll like really study it and really analyze it and all of that. And then after doing all of that, they'll like play someone who feels, and it feels like that person's just kind of pressing buttons or doing whatever, and then they'll lose. And then that always feels really bad because it's like, I thought I was putting in a lot of work and I thought I was doing what I needed to do to get better. So like, why am I losing to people who aren't doing that or who just kind of do whatever? So it's definitely something that comes up in other
Two,
comp-
three,
competitions and
four,
other competitive
five,
games as well.
six, seven, eight, nine,
Also have to make a
10,
training plan and be held accountable for it.
12.
Otherwise, you're just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. Not a great use of time. Yeah, and then that goes back to like figuring out. It's hard to figure out what's the most important thing to learn and break it down in a way where you really can learn it. But yes, over the course of this series, I hope to cover different ideas kind of related to that. So, and then maybe other people can talk about other ideas too if they have any. For me, it's hard to say what's been the best way to actually get better because it's like sometimes I feel like I'm doing something that should help a lot, but then I run into that thing of where it's like it doesn't seem like it's really doing like I'm not getting better results even though I'm like putting in the effort. So it's like was it was it a bad way of
One,
practicing or
two,
was it like
three,
is it something that's going to pay off in the long run?
five,
So
six,
I guess it is
seven,
worth mentioning like
nine,
if you learn a lot of new stuff,
11,
theoretically it
12,
should pay off more in the long
13.
run because
Fighting
you know
Queen!
you can't just always do the same things. Eventually, like eventually you're going to run into people who play really fast and also make good decisions like I was saying. So in order to beat those people, you have to like improve your decision making ability and not just play really fast. But it's like it's hard to no.
One, two,
So I
three,
don't know if
four,
like I don't know the
five,
best way to
six, seven,
practice
eight,
improving your
nine,
speed and stuff and
10,
improving your how fast
11.
you make decisions
Fighting Queen!
because there's all kinds of decisions that you have to make throughout the game. So there's always just chaining, but you also have to like get better at reading the opponent's field. And that's not necessarily like reading in advance. You just have to, like, when you hear the chain going off, you have to be able to look and kind of immediately tell what size chain is it and how should I respond? Like, this is three double, and you have to know immediately that's a three double. And then you have to like immediately react to that. You have to know this is a three chain. And
One,
so you
two,
have to get really good at
one
reading
punch.
quickly. Like, if the opponent just does something like, oh, this is going to be a four chain, and I know it's a four chain. So
Two,
it's both your own field
three.
when you set something off and the opponent's field when they set something off. So it's like, then the further up you go, the more you have to like know and be good at.
One,
So and this all just makes it really hard to get better at all because like there's so much. So it's like if you want to go from like a beginner level, like say like below 2000, like a beginner level, not really a competitive player, to like a low level competitive player, but you kind of just have to learn how to make a chain, and it's not easy. Like that's really difficult, but it's a lot easier than like having to make a chain while like defending against the opponent's attacks and also like reading what they're probably going to do next and like doing a whole bunch of other stuff, making smaller chains and then like building attacks and building counters and all of that. It's like just building a chain at
two,
some point starts to feel like something that's actually pretty easy once you get to a high enough level.
one, 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 two,
But
three, four,
in the old,
five,
in
six,
like way
seven,
long time ago,
eight,
it used to always be like, how fast can you build a 10 chain? That's how
12,
people kind of estimated how
13,
good you were.
14.
So it's like,
Fighting Queen.
if you can build a 10 chain really fast, then you're probably good. And it's still kind of true. It's like now I would say the skill level has just gone up, so you kind of have to be able to do more than that. You have to be able to play the mid game, you have to be able to build attacks and counters to some extent. You have to be able to read the opponent's field to some extent if you want to be really good. But you still just kind of have to be able to build a 10 chain really quickly. Like that's always going to be an
One,
important skill to have. Uh-oh. Oh, I
one,
cleared the red.
two,
But another reason why I'd really compare it to something like chess is because for chess, people are like well aware of how hard it is. So if you said like, I want to become a grandmaster in chess, it's like, oh, that might take you like, that might take you your whole life. That might take you, you know, years and years, and you might not make it even if you played really seriously all of those years. So people like kind of have just an understanding of how difficult chess is and how much there is to it, but I'd say it's not really the same for something like Puyo. People kind of think, oh yeah, it's can't be that difficult. Like I'm gonna play it a little bit and then I'll be really good. And yeah, but realistically, it's like I'd say Puyo is a lot like chess in the sense that you can play it for years and years and not really get that good or only get so good. And
one,
if you want to go up,
two,
like if you want to go up
three,
100 rating points
four,
in chess,
six,
that might
seven,
be a really long
eight,
time and a lot of
nine,
effort, especially if you
10,
get higher
11,
up in the ratings.
12,
But if you
13,
want to go up like
14,
100 rating in
15.
Puyo, I'd say it's actually like kind of similar. Like it's a lot like that where it's like it might take you a really long time to get there. It's not obvious. Also, that was a pretty good 16. I'm happy with that one. But right, wait, I got this. I don't got it. I want to see if I can get this.
One.
It's very difficult. Wait, I think I got it.
One, two, three, four, five,
Oh, the red
six,
cut.
seven, eight. Fighting Queen!
But also, higher rank online versus respects me too much. Yeah. They could easily send main at any time, and I probably will mess up the extension. So that's. Oh man. I've never made a 16 in my life. Well, I feel like. I guess that's kind of surprising to me because I feel like you're at a pretty high level. At least, like, like not like a top level competitive player, but at your level, like I wouldn't be that surprised if you had already made 5 or had already made 16 chains before. But I I do pretty well if my opponents respect me too much in the same way because I'm kind of bad at extending chains quickly. But so I would say it's probably my weakest area because there are situations where it's like if you put someone else who's the same rating as me in that situation, they're almost always going to win. But when it's me, I don't really win it that consistently when you have to like extend your chain in a hurry. So that's why I feel like it's one of my weakest skills. But a lot of people kind of like assume that because of like how high rated I am, they assume that I'm going to make it or that I'm at the level where they can't send their main chain, so then they don't, and then it gives me an advantage. But this chain has potential. Oh.
One, two, three,
Oh.
four, five.
Well, like I was saying, I do think speed tends to pay off more, but at some point you like have to learn. You have to make bigger chains or learn different ways of making chains. So something that I think is just really important in general in Puyo is that you just have to see different ways that you could make a chain from something and then do it faster. Like it's easy to see going left to right. Well, you could also go right to left, but if you want to do that, then you have to do something like this. Then you have to know that the blue has to go here to connect because if it's here, it'll miss. So there's a lot of small things where it's like if you're really good at seeing it,
One,
then you know where
two,
like how to
three.
create a chain in that each different situation. But you have to like it takes so much practice to be able to see a lot of these things. Same with like knowing what's going to cut in a chain or like where might something cut. There's a lot where it's like I feel like you just kind of learn it through experience.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And
Exploding knee.
something else that is really hard to deal with is that it feels like everyone is inconsistent when it comes to Puyo. Like no one ever, no one is like always. Everyone has good and bad days. Is how I would say it. Like you would think that once they're really good, you would kind of just be more consistent, or you're always gonna play at a certain level. But even then, it doesn't always happen.
1, 2,
In the Japanese communities, they talk about like
4,
raising your skill floor, so improving the level of your worst performance.
10,
And
11,
one idea they have for that is that you just always learn, or that you really practice your openings, and that might help you to raise your skill floor so that your worst performance isn't as bad. Because sometimes you can like be a good player and all of that, but you just for some reason on a certain day play significantly worse, and it's like doesn't
1,
make sense to me is
2,
what I would say. It
rock punch.
doesn't feel like it makes sense, but it's like sometimes you just can't see how to make the chains, or you can't read your pieces correctly, or it's like
1,
I don't know what it is, but it seems to happen to everyone where it's like
4,
sometimes you just can't play like you
7,
usually do.
8, 9.
But
Fighting queen.
watching other players is a good way to try and learn new things just because it's like the way I would describe it is that you could come up with a lot of it yourself, but it takes a lot more effort and it takes a lot more time and effort, and you don't necessarily gain that much from it. So if someone else can just tell you themselves, that might be better.
1,
That's why things like coaches exist in other
3,
sports and
4,
other activities,
5,
because it's not necessarily that you could never figure out the
9,
things on your own. It's more that it would take a lot more time and effort, so it's a lot easier just to have someone else tell you. So when you watch other people play, it's kind of like that, where it's like they're not directly telling you stuff, but you can learn from them anyway, and you can say, oh, that's a different way that you can create a chain here, or that's a different way you can extend your chain in this situation, and you can learn a lot of new stuff that way. Oh, there's no space.
1, 2,
I do think, like, sometimes I wonder if it can be kind of daunting, or it can maybe be intimidating if people understand that it's really difficult, because sometimes it's like if something seems pretty easy, then you might want to try it out just because you think it's like, oh, it seems like I could do that. But if you know it's like, oh, that's going to be extremely hard and I'm going to have to play for years and years to become good at it, and I might never become good at it, that can maybe be kind of daunting and maybe make people like not want to try it because
6,
it's too intimidating. So sometimes I wonder if people
10,
like
11,
um,
12.
would be less inclined to try out Puyo if they knew how hard it was in the long run. But you can always play like you don't have to play to be like the best player in the world necessarily. If you don't, so something that I think is important in all types of competitive games is if you can just find people who you are like reasonably matched with, like reasonably evenly matched with to play against. If you have a good opponent to play against regularly, it makes things so much easier because a lot of these niche games that don't necessarily have a very big player population struggle with like, well, you just have to play the same, like you don't have that many options. You just have to play the same people over and over a lot, which comes back to what you were saying. But it's like that sometimes that can be um, a really frustrating thing to deal with if there's no one that's like really around your skill level because you just like you can only play people who always beat you or something like that, or the only people you can beat are people who are like not that are so much lower rated than you that like doesn't even feel good to beat them because you're just like way higher level than them.
1,
So it can be
2,
hard to find a good
3,
opponent. So if you
4,
have that, it makes things a
5,
lot easier just to
6,
have a reason to keep
7,
playing,
8,
just to beat
9,
play against the person who
10,
you like playing
11,
against.
12. Fighting Queen!
But without that, it's like really tough. That's a thing in pretty much all the like all the things I'm into. That's like a thing because I play, I played a really um, not very
1,
popular fighting game,
2,
so it's like,
3,
well, it's really hard to find
4,
opponents. Oh,
5,
hello.
6.
And
Exclusive
then
feud.
because you can't find opponents at all, you can't find people who are like
1,
at an even level to play against, so then it becomes hard to enjoy playing. It's also a really big problem for beginners because like if beginners don't have other beginners to play against,
1,
then it's very hard to feel motivated to keep playing because you just always
1,
lose to everyone pretty
2,
much. That's what it's going to feel like because a lot of people have been playing for years or have been playing, have been yeah, been playing for years, so it's like uh, it's hard to catch up to that. So if you can just have someone to play against who's like at your level, that really can make all the difference a lot of times. Because now you have a reason to keep playing, you have a reason to practice things because, you'll see it pay off. So one of the problems is that it's hard to see improvement in something like Puyo where you have to see your improvement by like playing against other people. Like,
1,
so there's some single player stuff that you can do, like just chain building, so you can see improvement in that.
2,
But if you want to see how
3,
good you are at like
4,
competitive Puyo,
5,
you just have to
6,
compete against other people and see like how much you
8,
win. And
9,
and if your
10,
opponent is really good,
11.
you can get better at the
Fighting
game
Queen!
and still like lose. So you can like do something that's a lot better and have improved a lot and then still lose anyway because well the opponent was just still even better than that. It's like, so it makes it hard to like tell if you're improving, and it makes it hard to want to keep trying to improve
two,
because
three,
it's gonna feel like
four,
you never get rewarded for it.
six,
That's something that I would notice in Arcana Heart in the fighting game, because it's like that one was even more like oftentimes even larger skill gaps and like even less players. So it's like people would practice and they would do something that's a lot better, and I could tell it's like, oh, they got a lot better, but they still never win a round against me because it's like it's not, they haven't caught up to me
two,
to be able to win a
three,
round off of me or something
four,
like that. But I can tell they got better. I can tell they've been practicing,
seven, eight,
and it's like
nine, 10,
I feel like a
11,
lot of people will just get
12.
discouraged
Fighting
by
Queen.
things like that and find it hard to keep trying to get better. So if there's ever any way to like um, have more even matches more frequently, I think that's something that's important to try and do. So any way you can like encourage that or help make that happen, I think is gonna help.
One.
And some people don't mind playing matches where they lose a lot. So it's like, but most people
Two.
want to play some
Three.
like
Four.
want to play an even match every now and then.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Fighting Queen.
If you're still here, AOD, do you have any thoughts on like um, improving at competitive Puyo?
1,
Like, so I was saying that I feel like
1.
speed is really important, more so than most people realize. Where it's like rather than making good decisions, you just have to make fast decisions,
3,
and that matters a lot more than people realize.
6,
But
7, 8, 9, 10,
I'm getting
11,
consistent 13.
12. Fighting Queen.
One thing I've said before, but I always think it's kind of funny, is that
1.
I used to think I was a lot better at Puyo in the past, and now that I've gotten a lot better than I was back then, I think I'm not. Like, I probably think I'm worse at Puyo than I thought back when I wasn't as good as I am now. Because I know, like, more about all the things that I don't know. so, so it's like, I know all the things that I'm not doing well or that I can improve on, and essentially the things that I want to talk about in this series. Like, I know the things that other players can do that I can't do, eh, that like separates them from me or makes them better at the game than I am. But in the past, I didn't know all of that stuff, so I just felt like I think I'm pretty good now. It's like I think I'm pretty close to like all these other people. Like the pro level players don't look that much better than me. I mean, they're obviously better than me, but it's like, I mean, I'm kind of close to that. It's like I can kind of do what they do, and now it's like, no, I can't do that. They're,
One,
I can
two,
see all the things where it's like,
three,
wow, they do this and they do this and they do this and they do this better than me and this better than me,
8,
this better than me.
9,
It's like,
10, 11. Fighting Queen!
I think that's funny. It's kind of like the Dunning-Kruger effect in that I've heard the Dunning-Kruger effect isn't actually what you think it is, or something like that. But I know I don't know the details on that.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Anyway, for this first episode, I just kind of wanted to
Fighting Queen!
talk about more like broad the idea of getting better at Puyo, what it's like, and then in later episodes, I wanted to pick some more specific topics and like talk about how to build better chains or things like that, um, how to determine what's a good attack and what's a bad attack, or like
1,
what you should try to read on the opponent's field. If you look at their field,
4,
what are you looking
5,
for? But this one I just wanted to keep general and not really go into anything too specific just yet.
Fighting Queen!
But let's see if I can get anything. So a good way to understand like how much you hesitate when you play is to do time challenge and like so it can feel like you are playing at full speed the entire time, but you can be like 3 to 5 seconds off just because you like took longer on certain decisions. And it doesn't, obviously it's going to depend on how many pieces you put down and how often you split as well. But then after you account for that, everything else is just you hesitating on placing a piece or making a decision. So if you feel like you're playing at full speed, you can see like how much time you lose when you do one of these time challenges. So another thing I want to do was like really investigate how much does speed actually matter and how much do you actually hesitate when you hesitate.
1, 2, 3,
But that's a video for another time.
5, 6,
Oh, this is not
7,
enough.
8. Fighting Queen!
So like
Very good.
if I do 100,000, if I'm playing well, I can like usually get it around 50 seconds every time. Not every time I get it, it will be around 50 seconds, but I'm not really consistent enough to make a 100,000 point chain every time. It's fast, but the like really high level players are still faster than that. So it's like, I
1,
think that's enough.
2, 3, 4,
Maybe I'm playing well.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Except I didn't quite get it. But yeah, see, it's like
1.
if I'm playing well, I tend to get around 100,000 points in 50 seconds. So if you look at my record, I've played it so much that the bottom time is 50.1. So that means I've made 300 chains that are 100,000 points in less than 50.1 seconds. Except for that top one is some kind of bug. Right. Oh, I put it upside down. I still have a chance here. Need so many greens. Oh. Let's see if I can get it. If you really want to do well on these, you have to not split at all. But in an actual game, people tend to split anyway. So, if this is enough, it was pretty fast. And I barely split.
4, 5,
But I don't know if it's enough.
6, 7, 8, 9,
It's not going to be enough.
10, 11, 12, 13.
Oh, it's
Fighting
like
Queen!
under 45 seconds. So there you can see, if you do this challenge and you set off a 14 chain, if you're not at like whatever 50 seconds, you're going kind of slow. Like you could go faster. You're probably hesitating somewhere.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Fighting Queen!
I think I'm gonna do
Enjoy my
one
technique.
more and then kind of wrap it up for today. Excuse me. Yeah, it's not just hesitating. It's also how often you split. Oh. Well, the shade's gonna be big enough, but excuse me.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
See that one. I used more pieces than I had
Enjoy
to,
my technique.
and I also spent a good amount of time thinking. But it's like, doesn't feel like I spent, 8 seconds or whatever thinking. Excuse me. Gonna have to stop. Getting a tickle in my throat. It's really annoying. See, I don't know how much time I spent there thinking about that placement. But it didn't feel that long, but I'm sure it was actually pretty long.
1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Fighting Queen! Did you enjoy my technique?
Right, I think that's it for today, but I have a good amount of more ideas, so hopefully I can keep up with it. Not sure if I probably won't always do it at the same time, just because like I'm sure some times are better for some people and other times are better for other people, but I don't know what the schedule's going to be like or how often I'll do uploads. But for the moment, I feel like I'm pretty into it, so I'll probably do more than once a week. Maybe like a couple times a week or 3 times a week, but we'll see. Anyway, that's it for now.